Today's video on the channel will be about an unusual topic, which is how to hide the Suez Canal. We invite you to watch videos on our channel and to subscribe. Welcome, the Fact Hunter. Lieutenant Jasper Maskelyne, a peacetime celebrity illusionist and magician who gained fame throughout Europe with his juggling performances, had a depressing transition before he was accepted into the British Army. After the outbreak of war on September 1, 1939, he was convinced that he should adapt his stage skills for the military. However, every time Maskelyne tried to enlist, the enlisting officers replied politely that Britain needed young men to fight, not 39-year-old magicians. In mid-1940, a family friend arranged for Maskelyne to meet with gray-haired Professor Frederick Lindemann, a scientific advisor to Prime Minister Winston Churchill. Lindemann was grumpy, stubborn, and contemptuous of younger scientists. He was only interested in facts, not illusions or juggling tricks. So he sat in his chair and listened skeptically as Maskelyne presented his ideas. "The effects I can create on the battlefield are unlimited," exclaimed Maskelyne. "I can create cannons where there are none and build ghost ships sailing the seas. I can place an entire army on the field and make planes invisible." Lindemann listened fascinated, although he wasn't sure whether he was dealing with a genius or a madman telling unbelievable stories. Britain, however, was threatened by the invasion of Hitler's hitherto invincible war machine, which had just conquered most of Western Europe in an astonishingly short time. A pinch of magic could therefore help, Lindemann ultimately decided. Nothing was lost by trying out a radically different approach to the concept of warfare. A few weeks later, Jasper Maskelyne was drafted into the British Army. While the magician was in a training camp in England, learning which hand to salute with, German General Erwin Rommel arrived in the remote Tripoli, Libya, on February 12, 1941, on a Luftwaffe plane. Rommel, Hitler's favorite, had been sent by the Führers to rescue the immobilized Italian army, which was in danger of being pushed out of North Africa. 2 months earlier, British General Archibald Wavell and his reinforced army in Egypt had launched a strong offensive against Marshal Rudolfo Graziani's outnumbered Italian army. Soon the Italians were in full retreat, and Wavell's desert rats, as his soldiers proudly called themselves, had penetrated 1,400 kilometers into the sultry Libyan territory. By February 7, 1941, at a cost of 500 dead and 1,200 wounded, the British had taken 130,000 prisoners, 400 tanks, and 1,300 guns. Adolf Hitler expected great deeds from Erwin Rommel. The general brought with him tanned young warriors from the Afrika Korps to reinforce the Italian troops over which he took command. Rommel's goal was to drive the British out of Libya into Egypt, then cross the Suez Canal and capture the vast oil fields in the Middle East, from where Britain drew most of its fuel. On March 24, 1941, at dawn, Erwin Rommel struck. His tanks destroyed the British 2nd Armored Division, surprised in the port of Benghazi, attacked an Indian motorized brigade, trapped the Australian 9th Division in the port of Tobruk, and drove the remnants of the British Army in disarray eastward toward the Egyptian border. The now triumphant Rommel awaited Hitler's order to enter Egypt and seize the Suez Canal. Meanwhile, the famous illusionist, Lieutenant Jasper Maskelyne, arrived in Cairo and was assigned to the camouflage section of British headquarters in the Middle East. Once again, he suffered the agonies of frustration. The Army Command did not know how to employ him. It was not until early September 1941 that Major Geoffrey Barkas, a film set designer before the war, called on Maskelyne. The two showbiz-bound men had known each other for years. Barkas was the head of the camouflage section. In a deliberately lighthearted tone, Barkas announced that the command had an important mission for the magician: to hide the Suez Canal. Sustaining the implied joke, Maskelyne countered, "Hide it? Gosh, I was hoping for something more difficult." "It's not a joke," Barkas assured the illusionist, with his head. "We want to protect the canal from Luftwaffe bombers. It's impossible, of course, but you have to do it." Running from north to south, the more than 160-kilometer-long Suez Canal connects the Mediterranean and Red Seas. The narrow road was vital to the British, as it shortened the sea route from Middle Eastern ports to London by several thousand kilometers. The canal was only 60 meters wide and about 12 meters deep. If Luftwaffe bombardments blocked this important line, British convoys would have to take a longer, much more dangerous route around the Cape of Good Hope, at the southern tip of Africa. The Luftwaffe had already tried dropping mines on the channel. To make it difficult for the Air Force to temporarily block the relatively narrow channel with sunken ships during the crossing, sappers constantly patrolled the route, and anti-torpedo nets were stretched shallow underwater. The British command in Cairo, however, wanted to reinforce the security of the canal, so it turned to Lieutenant Maskelyne to work his magic. Satisfied with the chance, Maskelyne, and a member of a group later known as the Magic Gang, flew over the canal and inspected its fortifications. These consisted of several old anti-aircraft guns, dug in at what seemed to be a couple of the canal's most sensitive points. Maskelyne's companion, a total pessimist, urged him to abandon the project. But the magician returned to Cairo convinced that he could make the Suez Canal disappear here. He was convinced that the same principles of optics that he had applied for so many years on countless stages in Europe would also work here. Maskelyne worked tirelessly and in complete secrecy for days and nights, trying one trick after another, but always dismissing them as impractical. First he became discouraged. Then he became despondent. No illusionist problem had ever surpassed him, and now this one promised to do so. When he was close to announcing to his command that he couldn't complete the task, a solution to this complicated problem came to mind. Throughout his long stage career, he had used unexpected effects, smoke and flame, to hide the disappearance or swapping of objects, or to draw the audience's attention to a certain part of the stage. No one, he knew, could resist the temptation to direct their eyes to an unexpected burst of flame or cloud of smoke. Now he could use the same principle to fool Luftwaffe bombardiers as they came over the Suez Canal at night. The solution was searchlights, placed at hotspots by the anti-aircraft gun batteries he had seen during his tour of the waterway. If enough searchlights were installed along the canal, Maskelyne said, they could create a curtain of light. German airmen trying to pierce this light veil with their eyes would not be able to find the canal in their sights. When the magician presented the plan to his compatriots, they were pessimistic. Would he be able to get enough new searchlights? Probably not. But the power of existing ones can be increased. Will the trick work during the day? Undoubtedly yes, as anyone temporarily blinded by a photographic flash knows. As expected, high-powered searchlights were in short supply in North Africa. Undaunted, Maskelyne and the gang of magicians began trying to increase the power of those searchlights they could get their hands on. By trial and error, they decided on a technique for intensifying the intensity of light, developed by technician Rube Goldberg. It involved connecting 24 small tin mirrors in a bent steel frame that surrounded the lenses of the lamps. With this rearrangement, the light beam of one reflector was divided into 24 streams. Each of them covered almost the same area of the sky as the output reflector, sending its rays 14 kilometers into the sky. Maskelyne, however, was still not satisfied with the improvement. He decided that the devices should be reworked so that each of the 24 searchlights could be rapidly rotated to create dazzling circles of light spinning in the sky. Together with an electrician from the Royal Engineers, the magician perfected a second modification. Until now, Maskelyne's dazzling lights remained a theory. Will they have the desired effect on pilots and bombardiers? The presentation was scheduled for the night of September 21st. The prototype was moved to the dark desert near Cairo, and Maskelyne flew as a passenger on an RAF transport aircraft. When the experiment site was approached, the pilot radioed to turn on the searchlight. From high up, the magician in the plane could see 24 extremely bright streams of light reaching far into the black sky. As the plane flew closer, the white stripes began to swirl wildly and turn night into day. A blinding glow flooded the cockpit and passenger compartment. The glare seemed to penetrate closed eyelids, making it impossible for the crew to react rationally. Suddenly, the pilot lost control, and the plane began spinning wildly downward. With bright spots dancing in front of his eyes, the airman tried to read the altimeter readings. The instrument indicated 120 meters. Just before the crash, the pilot managed to level the plane. Everyone on board breathed a sigh of relief. A few weeks later, a number of improved searchlights stood along the entire Suez Canal. The Luftwaffe made numerous flights, trying to break through the blinding veil of light, all in vain. The canal was safely hidden. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more videos on the Fact Hunter channel.